What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Hey guys, before we get this video started, just want to let you all know that myself and Benny over at Comic Storian and Natalie, Zodical Candy, all over at Eligible Monster, we've relaunched that channel. So if you guys want to see us play video games and hang out and, get shot with Nerf guns and all kinds of good stuff, then make sure you guys go check that out. Make sure you sub, check out the videos, the whole 9 yards. But anyway, so getting into this, man, dude, The Flash, God, man, The Flash is the best thing coming out of DC Rebirth, and there's no arguing that point. This story, man. This is so good. I absolutely love The Flash. But with the whole concept of Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, this story is really going to serve two purposes. The first is to, reshuffle his origin a little bit and shed some light on the, DC Rebirth landscape with regards to the Reverse Flash. And the second is that it's actually going to make him, I think, more tragic. I think this origin story that we get here is better than his original origin. Now, for those people who are new to the Flash mythos, who are new to my channel, have never, seen videos like this before, I want to talk to these guys for a second. So if you've been around for a little while, bear with me. I want to talk to the new guys for a second. So Eobard Thawne is effectively like the arch enemy of the Flash Barry Allen. I mean, they are mortal enemies. The idea is that Eobard Thawne draws on something called the negative speed force. And the way this works is that for the most part, it's almost identical to the speed force in the sense that it allows, Eobard Thawne to run super fast, and he has regenerative healing, and he can run into other dimensions, and he can run through time, and so on and so forth. The difference here is that the negative speed force is a cancer of sorts, in the sense that it basically exists to effectively eat away at the speed force and to corrupt those individuals who tap into the speed force. And so the ultimate goal of Eobard Thawne is, of course, to kill Barry Allen, to more or less make his life a living hell, but to also corrupt him by virtue of corrupting the speed force, which means that it would spread. Like if you dropped ink into a jar of water, that ink's going to spread all over the place. The negative speed force does the exact same thing. But with regards to the history between the two, in New 52, when DC relaunched everything in 2011, Eobard Thawne got a brand new origin, and a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people were really upset about it because they preferred the original Flash Rebirth story back before the New 52, where it shined some light on his origin. It talked about how he had basically instigated all the events of Barry Allen's life that led to him to becoming the Flash. It really shined a lot of light on Eobard Thawne in terms of what he was and why he functioned and so on and so forth. What DC did with regards to DC Rebirth is they came back and they basically fixed all that. In the same way that Wally West had appeared and basically talked to Barry Allen and woke him up to the way that things are supposed to be, the impact of Flashpoint, the idea that presumably somebody out there who we know to be Dr. Manhattan messed with everybody's memories and all that kind of good stuff. During the events of DC Rebirth, the exact same thing happened to Eobard Thawne. And the result was that he basically woke up to everything that existed before the New 52, during the New 52, up to the current moment. And that's one of the reasons why his actions during the button set him in motion of trying to find out who it was that messed with everybody's memories, because he'd been woken up to the fact that someone out there was so powerful that they could effectively reshape the entirety of the universe on a whim. And so it was a pretty huge thing. That really gets us caught up to the current moment. I mean, the only thing that happened before this story was that Eobard Thawne had basically, returned after his presumed death during the events of the button. He had beat the heck out of New 52 Wally West and then kidnapped Iris West, took her to the future, knowing Barry Allen would follow. And that's exactly what happens here. Barry Allen really just kind of like pops up in the 25th century. Now, the funny thing about this is, remember, Eobard Thawne originates from the 25th century. And this is where the new origin story begins to come into play. From the perspective of Barry Allen, this initial origin is given to us in the form that he shows up and he meets a young Eobard Thawne who basically sees himself as someone that's going to be like the Flash. Eobard Thawne idolizes Barry Allen. Now, what'll happen here in a little while is we'll actually get the Eobard Thawne perspective of this, which will give us even more information. But the idea here is that with Barry Allen being met by what appears to be his biggest fan, he effectively takes Eobard Thawne under his wing. And the idea is that he starts training him to become the Flash, using his powers in a way that's respective, making him a superhero for the 25th century, which is everything that Eobard Thawne could ever hope for. The problem with this is that somewhere along the line, Eobard Thawne fell to being a bad guy. Now, we're not explicitly told what any one particular action was. Instead, we're basically given this idea that Eobard Thawne became more and more extreme in the sense that he was hurting people more more than he needed to in order to basically keep them from committing crimes. Now, of course, as we know with the Flash Barry Allen, he has powers. He could kill virtually anybody that he came across so long as they're not like Superman or somebody like that, but he always holds back because he recognizes that the goal is to basically imprison and rehabilitate, not to kill. And so what ends up happening here is that Eobard Thawne basically returns later on as the Reverse Flash as we know him. Now, this is a little 2-page explanation given to us by Barry Allen, and this for the most part is what we already know. What Eobard Thawne is going to do, and he's going to come back and give us the whole backstory and tell us how things really are, and that's where things get really cool. But Barry Allen basically showing up in the 25th century, instead of it being this age of enlightenment where things are so much better, instead he basically comes across this very dark future where superheroes are effectively feared, or at least the Flash is essentially feared as opposed to being worshipped. Now what this does is it leads him to retreat to the Flash Museum, ultimately locating Iris West, whereby Eobard Thawne makes his presence known. And that's kind of the crazy thing here, is because there's always been this semblance of the Flash Museum when it came to Eobard Thawne. That's one of the things about his original origin, or really the most popular origin that people know during the story, The Return of Barry Allen in the 1990s, I think it was, maybe the 1980s. But during that story, it was the idea that Eobard Thawne was obsessed with Barry Allen. He had visited the Flash Museum time and time again. And so it's a well-established fact that in the 25th century, there's a museum dedicated to Barry Allen and his exploits as the Flash. But what ends up happening here is Eobard Thawne gives us this back aspect. And what we end up finding out is that Eobard Thawne as a kid had lost his parents in some kind of tragic accident. What it is isn't really relevant. But the idea here is that he basically became obsessed with the Flash Barry Allen. He had nobody else to look up to. And so of course, donning his costume, dressing up as the Flash, giving himself the same powers, led to Barry Allen's appearance and the two of them becoming teammates. Now, a very significant moment here comes between the two of them, and it's actually really, really cool because they have this sort of heartfelt discussion with the idea that they can move so fast, they can achieve so many things, and they can do so much with their life that time's almost meaningless for them because they can run back and forth through time. They can do all manner of different things, and time is really more of a tool as opposed to a limitation. But with discussion between the two of them, it's Barry Allen effectively saying that every second is a gift. In any moment, they could effectively be killed. Now, this also coincides with the idea of Eobard Thawne becoming a bad guy, but following his defeat, he had basically gone through this kind of rehabilitation process. And that's what makes this so tragic, is because it doesn't look like he's putting on a sham. It doesn't look like he was putting on a show, that he was going through the motions of being a good guy, yada, 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 that he actually was trying to rehabilitate himself, that he was trying to be a hero. He was trying to live up to the mantle of Barry Allen as a hero, as opposed to just a guy out there who's going through the motions and will one day be the one to beat Barry Allen. And so what ended up happening is, of course, he dons the cosmic treadmill, the device that's basically used to travel back and forth through time or to break dimensional barriers, and he actually dons this yellow costume. Now, the whole idea behind the yellow costume in terms of this origin is cool, because in previous stories, it was designed to basically show like, yeah, I'm the antithesis of Barry Allen, you know, I'm the opposite of the Flash, I'm his mortal enemy, you know, that kind of a thing. In this story, he donned the yellow costume because it's what all of Flash's partners use. Because remember, when the pre-New 52, when the classic Wally West was Kid Flash and he was the sidekick of Barry Allen, he wore yellow. Eobard Thawne basically modeled himself after the sidekicks of Barry Allen because he saw himself as a sidekick of Barry Allen. And that's what was so cool, because traveling into the past and seeing Barry, and then seeing Barry speak with classic Wally West, and then Barry giving classic Wally this watch and saying every second is a gift, then it betrays everything that Eobard Thawne stood for. And that's what makes this so cool and so tragic, because in the most popular origin from The Return of Barry Allen back, you know, during the Mark Waid days on The Flash, the origin story of Eobard Thawne was pretty straightforward. He was a guy who was obsessed with Barry Allen. He made himself look like Barry. He gave himself the same powers. He traveled into the past. He came across a museum where he realized that he was destined to become the Flash's greatest enemy. He had a psychological break and became a bad guy. The whole idea with this origin is it makes it far more tragic. He saw himself as a legitimate friend and a legitimate sidekick of Barry Allen, and going back in time and seeing this moment shared, or at least the moment that he thought he shared with Barry, being shared with the classic Wally West, suddenly meant that Eobard Thawne was not important. He was not significant. He was just a guy that Barry met somewhere, and Barry didn't think anything of Eobard Thawne, but Eobard Thawne thought everything about Barry Allen. And so again, it's this beautiful moment, because now Eobard Thawne has so much motivation. I mean, that's one of the things that always made him cool. He was the guy that would keep coming back over and over and over again. He was stronger, he was faster than Barry, but in terms of the tragic element of his character, this, I think, does an amazing job of bringing that into fruition. And so, of course, effectively toppling Barry Allen, one of the things that Barry hints at is the notion of Eobard Thawne killing Iris West. But the funny thing about this is that Eobard Thawne says, look, I could kill you, but there's no fun in that. I mean, what good would it do to kill you? You wouldn't suffer. It would be too easy. It'd be too quick. I'm going to make you suffer by torturing everybody around you. And the first thing that he does is reveal the identity of Barry Allen to Iris West. And so again, this is cool because now Iris knows exactly who he is. Not only that, it's basically this notion that Iris West is confronted with the idea that Barry Allen's been lying to her the entire time. Now, the cool thing about this too is that Eobard Thawne also takes them on this sort of journey, basically showing them the failures of Barry Allen and showing them a future where Barry Allen and Iris West have kids and their kids grow up to become villains. And the reason for this is because of the fact that when it comes to the decision of Barry Allen or the Flash always wins out. Barry Allen's in the middle of a date with somebody and he has to whisk off with the Justice League because he's the Flash. This concept, according to Eobard Thawne, extends to everything else. Barry Allen never makes time for those that he cares about. He's always off being the Flash. He's always off being a superhero. The whole of humanity takes precedent over his family, which some would say makes sense. Others would say that's a failing. But the idea here is it extends to his family itself and simply saying that when your kids were taking their first steps, when Barry Allen's kids were speaking for the first time, when they had their recitals, when they had their plays, he was off being the Flash. And so he basically had children who grew up to resent him because he never played a role in their life. And this is huge because this cannot help but impact Iris West. Barry Allen tries to blow it off and say, oh, well, you know, that's Eobard Thawne being Eobard Thawne, you know, he's a bad guy. But for Iris West, but maybe there's some truth to that. Like, you've been lying to me this entire time because you've been trying to protect me. But at what point do you stop and say, maybe I shouldn't protect them, maybe I should just be there for them? And that's the whole idea that Iris West is wrestling with at the moment. Because again, on one side, she says, look, okay, I understand that if people knew that I knew who you were, they would come after me. They would try to attack me, they would kill me, torture me for information, whatever the case may have been. But from the perspective of Iris West, in truth, that's a risk she's willing to take. And we know just by virtue of the Flash stories before the New 52, that with Barry having his identity exposed to Iris, at the end of the day, it still benefits them because she's more of an emotional support character for him than anything else. When he feels like he can't go on, Iris West has his back and he keeps on keeping on. And so again, what ends up happening here is Eobard Thawne gives him a choice. He says, look, I will give you an opportunity. Either you can continue on this path that you're on, or I can take you to a place where you will never hurt anybody else and you'll never be able to lie to anybody else. Now, of course, Barry doesn't do this willy-nilly. The bargain that's more or less struck is that Eobard Thawne will never harm Iris West. Now, this is kind of uncharacteristic of Barry. I mean, with Eobard Thawne, Barry having full memory about Eobard, his whole history, the whole 9 yards, and Eobard Thawne being who he is, there's no reason for Barry Allen to trust him. Absolutely none. But for the most part, Barry actually goes with it, and the result is that Eobard Thawne throws him into the negative speed force. Now remember, this is designed to be a prison as much as it is a way for Eobard Thawne to corrupt Barry Allen, because the goal of Eobard is to make Barry Allen basically his equal, or somebody that can fight alongside him, somebody that'll be corrupted by the negative speed force and will stop being an enemy and effectively become an ally. The problem with this is that where Eobard Thawne returns and tries to kill Iris West, Barry emerges just in the nick of time as the negative Flash, is like the reverse Flash, I guess, of himself. It looks really cool the way his character is done. But the funny thing about this is that he's basically imbued with the negative speed force. This is what Barry Allen would look like if he were corrupted by the negative speed force. The difference here is that he still has control of his faculties. He's still very much residing, you know, with his love for Iris West and so on and so forth. Now, of course, this leads directly to a fight between the two of them that spans all the entire whole of the world's history. It starts from the very beginning of time all the way into the very distant future. Remember, this is the kind of thing that we're dealing with when it comes to Eobard Thawne and Barry Allen fighting. They can stretch across all time and space. And so it was really kind of a cool moment to see here, because ultimately Barry Allen gets the upper hand on Eobard Thawne when he strips him of his own speed. And this is designed to happen for a couple of reasons. The first is because it just gives us an indication of the new kind of powers that Barry Allen will have. The second is because it shows the hubris and the arrogance of Eobard Thawne to believe that he had the upper hand on Barry without realizing what it is that Barry was able to do with the negative speed force. And so, of course, stripping Eobard Thawne of his abilities, you know, Eobard is just a guy. I mean, he's just a dude who's there somewhere. Now, of course, going to try to attack Iris West, ultimately she ends up just kind of, you know, incinerating Eobard Thawne in his entirety, but he'll always make a return. But what this story does is it shifts over to the relationship between Barry and Iris, because at this point now, Iris is in a tough spot. what she has to do is come to grips with the fact that Barry has routinely lied to her, and regardless of what his motivation is, in the end, it was a lie. Now, the funny thing about this, and this is what makes this so interesting, is again, she could have been a support for Barry Allen. Had Barry gone to her and said, hey, look, I have to reveal this to you because now I'm running around with your nephew. I have to tell you that I'm the Flash. They would have sorted it out together. They would have got it figured out together. Barry Allen lying to Iris West and not telling her that he's the Flash indicates one major thing, and it's that he does not trust her with that information. Regardless of how he perceives it, it's totally irrelevant. There's what people think is real, and then there's what is real. And that's the nature of it. It's not how Barry Allen thinks Iris West will perceive it. It's how Iris West actually perceives it. And she sees it as though he does not trust her. And so again, that's why the whole situation becomes this very bitter moment between the two of them, because where they should be friends, where Iris West says, what else are you lying to me? And he thinks about telling her that the classic Wally West is back. You know, when he thinks about revealing this information to her, although he can't because classic Wally West asked him not to, in the end, he has to reconcile this with the fact that for the most part, Eobard Thawne ultimately won. That the people that Barry Allen cares about don't trust him anymore. Iris West doesn't trust him. The New 52 Wally West still doesn't trust Barry Allen because Barry Allen lied to him about his identity. The people that Barry Allen cares about are starting to walk away one by one. And so the ultimate goal of Eobard Thawne came to fruition in the sense that he cost Barry Allen the things that he loves the most. But with that being said, guys, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.